Today's video is going to be about my soil test of my garden. This is going to be a longer video because we're going to cover a decent amount of information. So let's start off with a screen recording of my soil test. The company that I used is My Soil. It's around $29 for one soil test. First time using them, and I was pretty happy with them. But let's get straight to the results and not waste time. So this is your first part of your soil test you'll see, and it has a graph between the two green bars is optimal. Obviously below the two green bars is low, and above those green bars are high. So let's go from there directly to the actual individual results. So the pH range, my garden was 6.97. Basically it's neutral pH, and neutral pH should be 7, optimal range 5.8 to 7. I'm actually very happy with that, and was quite surprised. Soils around here are naturally acidic, red clay soil, but I have added lime to the garden over the years to get the calcium up to help with like blossom end rot tomatoes and such. Seeing these pH results tells me, hey, I'm not going to add any lime for at least a year or two, or unless another soil test shows me that my pH is getting like below 6 or getting to the low 6s, because I don't want to raise my pH up anymore. My total nitrogen was low. As you can see, your results in optimal range. I'm definitely on the low side. Some soil tests don't even include nitrogen due to it's pretty complicated to measure it. The way this works, you basically put the soil in this jar. There's like a liquid in there. Don't dump that liquid out, keep it in there. There's a liquid in there, and there's a little capsule that's floating around in there. So I'm hoping the system that they use does give you a somewhat accurate nitrogen result, but nitrogen is difficult to measure, and some soil tests don't even measure it, which is a shame because nitrogen is the most used product by your plants. If you would like to understand how nitrogen works, I recommend looking on YouTube and looking up the nitrogen soil cycle. There's a couple of animated videos that are actually like 5 minutes long and do a good job of demonstrating how the nitrogen cycle works, and kind of understand it. It definitely is the most complicated of all of the NPK parts of your fertilizer, for sure. And the results can change dramatically based on soil moisture content, temperature, and all sorts of other circumstances. But my nitrogen is low, and we're going to go over how to fix that. You also notice it breaks it up on the two different types of nitrogen and it adds them together. So you could look those up individually if you would like to understand what the differences are between those and how the plants respond to those. Your phosphorus, that's your P, is good. 8 to 20 is optimal. I'm at 10.4, and my potassium is at 68.43, optimal 38 to 80. So very good results there. Sulfur content is good. Calcium content is great. Magnesium content is good. Sodium is fine. Iron is high. Now, why is my iron content so high? Well, I have red clay soil. What makes red clay soil red? Iron. So nothing we can do about that, and that's perfectly fine. That's just the natural parts of the soil around here. Like, you'll a lot of times see like grass fertilizers, like lawn fertilizers, they add the iron to it to help green up the grass. Red clay soil, you don't need more iron. It is loaded with iron. Magnesium is very good. It's actually almost at the high range. It's right at that top of the optimal side. Zinc is good. It's in between. Copper is good, but boron is low, and we're actually going to cover boron a lot in this video. Probably actually more than anything else in this video. We're going to cover boron and what is it. It's a micronutrient. How to fix it. Takes very little product to fix it, by the way, and kind of what it does, and certain crops respond to it differently. So we've seen that. My soil test is actually very good, except low nitrogen, which is very common. Like I said, some soil tests don't even cover nitrogen. So imagine having a soil test that didn't include nitrogen. You look at these soil tests, but wow, great soil, just a little low on boron, a micronutrient. Then you can put in a square foot of your garden. My garden roughly is around 425 square feet. My in-soil garden, I do have like one small raised beds and a few buckets, but my actual in the soil garden is around 425 square feet. And you can just have organic or synthetic. I prefer to garden organically, so it recommends a 1200 at 8.5 pounds, and then synthetic a 4600 at 2.2125 pounds. So very, you can see you need a lot less synthetic than organic. I would like to stick organically. If you scroll up, you can select the products you want. If I go to organic products, it's going to take me to the web page, and it recommends blood meal, which is what I use, which is what I bought. Synthetic product takes me to a different product, and you're not buying it from them. It just takes it to like one product took me to Amazon, one took me to a DIY your own web company. So they're not selling it through them, which is nice. It just takes you to the product, and you have pH and micronutrient products. And it just took me some generic product on Amazon. You can print, your stuff out if you would like, and it also includes, so let's go to learn more. It goes understanding your report. I'm not going to bore y'all with this, but it gives you, when you do your soil test, you select what you want: lawn and turf, vegetable garden, ornamental garden, tree shrubs and vines, and it goes over pH and micronutrients and stuff like that. So, which is quite nice. What else does it have? It has, I want to see if I can find it. We had a nice, I had printed it out. It was a product that shows you all of your different it explains what each element does in your garden. One thing it also gives you, though, is an estimated nutrient density score. Mine's at 74%, which is pretty good. And it goes into this long worded thing about what is nutrition density. And it basically has to do with the nutrients in our food and how over the years do we have really stripped our soils of all these micronutrients, and that the foods today just do not have nearly as much nutrients in them as they used to, your vitamins and your minerals. And it requires eating a lot more food to actually get the same amount. I'm not talking about calories. I'm talking about like those vitamins and those antioxidants, those micronutrients. And it goes on there about studies and all that. And it's something you can check out. I'm not going to read all this to y'all. But it is something you can look into. It is talked a lot about in the health communities about how our soils are being stripped, and we don't have the nutrition in the foods that we used to. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this company. So from here, we're going to go into the boron and the micronutrients and how we're going to fix them. Here we go. Before we do that, let's go into the plant nutrient demands. So nitrogen adequate supply of nitrogen associated with vigorous vegetable growth and plants dark green color. It breaks up to your two different ones. So you have your first one here, nitrogen in the form of nitrates are a readily available form of nitrogen not held on soil exchange sites and are prone to leaching if overused. Ammonia acts as a source of nitrogen and has an acidifying effect on most soils. So it kind of breaks those down. It goes into your phosphorus, plays a vital role in plant reproduction, i.e. fruit production, as well as early root growth and development. And then potassium plays a key role in the vast array of plant growth. So one thing about potassium, like if you grow on like potatoes, your root vegetables, especially sweet potatoes, they need a lot of potassium. If you're not getting good production from your root vegetables, give them a little. They can really benefit from additional potassium. It goes into calcium. A lot of times we think about calcium, we think about like blossom end rot, eggplant, peppers, tomatoes. Magnesium. Typically, if you add lime to your soil, you're going to end up adding calcium and magnesium. Sulfur, iron, manganese, boron, roles in sugar transport and cell wall properties. Boron is very important. We're going to cover what is important too, but when we talk about like sugar transport, one of the things that's really important for things like sugar beets. copper, and zinc, sodium. So it covers all those, which is quite nice. So, all right, let's go and just get to the boron part and go from there. All right, let's get into the next segment of the video, and let's go over boron first, and also micronutrients. So we'll go to boron and micronutrients, and then we'll go of how I'm fixing the nitrogen, which is going to be from blood meal, which we won't cover that much. So to fix the boron, we're actually going to end up using borax. That's the product that people use in laundry, and for cleaning things, borax is about 11% boron. And I'm going to go over a couple of studies from I think it's Michigan State University. I live in the central part of North Carolina, but they did a really good job of explaining boron, and they put it in a fairly easy language and actually a fairly quick read. And I will have links to both of these in the video. I have them bookmarked, so I'll put links to both of them so y'all can read it and fully and check it out. And their agriculture stuff is actually pretty good. So we have it broke up basically on two different things, and I'm gonna kind of quick read it for y'all. I'm not gonna waste y'all's time, but so let's go into why does boron show up on my soil test report. This was done in 2017. So even though you didn't request a special soil test for your boron when you sent samples into Michigan State University, the lab, you might have received a recommendation to add 1 to 2 pounds boron per acre. That's it, 1 to 2 pounds of boron per acre, so very little. Like nitrogen, the boron recommendation is not based on chemical analysis. Now this is from them, this is not applied to everything. The boron recommendation is not based on chemical analysis of your regular soil sample. Instead, it's based on many years of accumulated research results regarding crop responses to boron. And we are going to cover the response that different vegetables have to boron. Some really don't need it, and some really need a lot of it and don't do so well when they don't have it. The two main reasons why boron is routinely recommended: coarse soil texture, low in organic matter. Clay soil is coarse, it doesn't exactly have organic matter. Sandy soil would also apply to sandy soils, as they also low organic matter, and of course, crop sensitivity to boron deficiency, so crops need a lot of boron. Plant available boron exists in soils mostly as a neutral boric acid molecule. The source for this boron is mostly from decomposing organic matter in the soil, i.e., so this is the problem when you have soils of low organic matter. Many, if not most, Michigan, I don't live in Michigan, but if you do, soils contain adequate boron for good plant development. Coarse textured soils, especially those low in organic material, are the most common place where boron deficiencies occur. Coarse textured soils are more prone to drought. Clay soil actually holds its moisture pretty well, but sand does a terrible job of holding moisture. When soils are very dry, the decomposing of organic matter slows. If you don't have any material in your soil to decompose, I guess it doesn't really matter, sometimes causing boron deficiency. Boron is not bound to clay or organic matter particles and leaches through the soil profile, similar to nitrogen. So boron and nitrogen are kind of similar in a way that they leach from soil very easily. In coarse textured soils, this leaching is likely when wet conditions prevail. Some crops are much more sensitive to boron deficiency than others. A lot of those would be your brassicas, cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, kale, and there's of course many others, but cauliflower and broccoli are probably the most common thing that your home gardener's growing. Kale is pretty common. I don't like kale. Cabbage, turnip, rutabaga, and it goes over some cover crops, but we're really going to focus on those home gardening crops. Sugar beets, I talked about that earlier. Boron, sugar transportation. Apples, red beet, celery, and sunflowers also apparently are sensitive to boron deficiencies. Boron can be blended with dry gang fertilizer. We're going to go over how to add boron because you use such small quantities of it. The amount of boron that you add would be impossible to spread out by itself, really. You need to incorporate it into something to mix in really well and spread it out because you use such small amounts of it. Problems with boron toxicity can occur when crops sensitive to boron toxicity are planted with boron fertilizers present or sprayed with liquids containing boron. There are crop sprays of boron that people use, and there's actually specific boron products that you can buy to add on much large scale gardening. It would make absolutely no sense in the world for any home gardener to do so, because maybe the smallest amount you could buy is 10 pounds and you need like such a itty bitty amount of that. It just makes no sense. And it actually does talk about borax in here. A common problem situation arises when a smaller scale producer or home gardener receives a soil test report including boron recommendations and goes, how do I do this? Is the usual question. In some cases, where the crop is not of high economic importance, but when you're growing stuff in your home garden, you want your stuff to do well, right? Such as wildlife planting or home vegetable garden, you may choose to ignore the boron recommendation, but not necessarily. The following list provides ideas of boron applications for the market gardener or small scale grower. Boron may be blended into dry fertilizers. We talked about that. And it goes into what are boron fertilizers. Boron fertilizers including borax, which is 11% boron, and borite granular, 14% boron. This is a particular product that you would buy, so just use borax. It's very cheap. And it goes over a liquid as well, which is 20% boron, which is totally not necessary for your home gardener, and it just would be way too risky and you could kill your plants. Applications of 9 pounds borax, just 9 pounds of borax per acre will supply 1 pound of boron per acre. And they're talking about their soil tests. If there's a low issue of boron, they recommend 1 to 2 pounds per acre. So just 9 pounds of borax will add 1 pound of boron on an acre of land. Very small. How do we break that down? Well, it breaks it down for us, luckily. For gardeners, about 4 teaspoons of borax per 1,000 square feet is equivalent to 1 pound boron. 4 teaspoons is 3 tablespoons. 4 teaspoons is 1 tablespoon. There's 3 teaspoons, a tablespoon, and 1 teaspoon. So what are we going to do? If my garden is around 400 some square feet, so we'll cut that in half. So I'm just going to mix in about no more than 2 teaspoons of product into some granular fertilizer and spread out through my whole garden. Just 2 teaspoons of borax. That's it. Very little. Dry boron fertilizer should be broadcast off other fertilizers and worked into the soil. Okay. It also goes over how manure generally contains 0.03 to 0.08 pounds of boron per ton, more if composted. So there is some boron in manure, which is not a surprise because that is organic matter. And then we're going to go to the next one. Boron in vegetables, not too little, not too much. After plants micronutrients, your NPK, also calcium, magnesium needs are met. There are several micronutrients that come into play that can limit maximum yields. One of the more critical micronutrients to plant systems is boron. It is important to protein synthesis, seed and cell wall formation, pollen, grain germination, and pollen tube growth, and therefore fruit set and yield. Regulation of carbohydrate metabolism and sugar translocation. Boron is quite soluble and readily leach into some soil types, especially sandy soils typically used for vegetable production. In this study, it's going to show you a picture of like a jacked up cauliflower that has black boron. That's boron. It's very needed for cauliflowers we covered earlier. So then we're going to go into like boron responses of certain vegetables, and we're going to go over what it says about those. So an example of a low product, a vegetable that doesn't really need boron, asparagus, but a high would be broccoli. A carrot would be medium. Another high thing would be celery or cauliflower, low. Another common thing people grow, cucumber and onions, low. Pea, peppers, low. Spinach, medium. Corn, medium. Table beet, high. Tomato, medium. And turnip, high. Highly responsive crops will often respond to micronutrient additions if the nutrient concentration in the soil is low. Medium responsive crops are less likely to respond, and low responsive crops do not usually respond to fertilizer additions even at the lowest soil micronutrient levels. So your products, your vegetables that require very low boron really aren't even really going to do anything if you add boron to the soil. And medium responsive crops are less likely to respond. So they're going to respond some, but definitely not nearly as responsive as your high necessary. Boron requirements range anywhere from 0.5 to 3 pounds of available boron per acre, with 2 pounds per acre a good average. Since boron is readily leached from sandy soils, it is not included in a standard soil test. Growers or sandy sites should consider adding a boron evaluation to their soil test. But it goes over, you don't want to add too much because you can lead to toxicity. So be very careful. And it also talks about a leaf tissue test, which is kind of like a high-end test for soils. This is what like your corporate style farms, they end up taking tissue cells of the plant, and those get sent off, and they can actually see what is that plant lacking, what is it pulling in, and what needs to change in the soil. Boron applications should be made to bring mature leaf tissue to between 20 and 100 parts per million. Tissue levels over 200 parts per million are excessive and can be toxic. It goes over, they can be corrected with, fertilizers and such, and that's about it. Like I said, I'll have links to both of these studies in full if you want to read them. They're not even really studies, they're just going over the product. Let's go to the next thing of micronutrients as a whole, and a popular thing. Like I said, this is a longer video. Feel free to skip through whatever you want, but sometimes longer videos have to exist. So here we have Azomat. Hopefully I'm saying that right. It is we're gonna go over, I got a couple things printed out. It's fairly cheap, and it is organic, it's natural. You really can't harm your plants with it. You can add a ton to your soil, but it has a bunch of micronutrients in it. And the problem with the only bad thing I can say about it is there doesn't seem to be any consensus of what the actual application rate is. I do find some conflicting information. So I always go with the attitude less is more with more things. It's better to, not go overboard. So here we got a thing that's from Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and it does a pretty good job of explaining it fairly simply. Azomite rock dust is a naturally mined volcano. By the way, this comes from Utah. It's the only place in the world where it comes from. It's kind of like one of those freak accidents in nature where the right things happen at the right time tens of millions of years ago that allowed this deposit to happen. Azomite rock dust is a naturally mined volcano rock composed of over 70 minerals and trace elements that are essential for optimal plant health. By the way, people mix this in water and drink it. It's actually common in animal feed. People add it to their, for their cattle and stuff to try to get them the nutrients that they're not getting. The rock formation in Utah from which Azomat is mined was formed when volcano ash merged with seawater. This mixture of volcanic ash and seawater created a unique source of trace minerals and elements that most soils are void of. Just like humans, plants require many minerals to reach peak health and vigor. Very true. Remineralizing your soil with Azomite in your plants will thank you and reward you. It's simple to use, it's a naturally mined product, it requires no mixing or special equipment, it's odorless, and won't restrict aeration or water penetration. It's a trace mineral soil amendment, complex of natural occurring minerals which contain essential elements, micronutrients for plant growth. So it just helps, it's loaded with all sorts of micronutrients, including boron, by the way, very little amount of it. You can use it for organic gardening if that is important to you. It's very easy to use, and I'll give you an example of how these application rates vary so much. So this is from this particular website. For gardeners, spread 1/4 pound to 2 pounds per 10 feet. I'm going to assume that's squared feet, and rake into the soil. It also has applications of use 1 teaspoon in 1 cup of watering quarterly for houseplants, of planting in rows, mixed into soil along rows at a rate of 1 pound per 25 feet of row. If the plant bed is established, sprinkle 1 to 3 tablespoons per seedling. So the application rates are all over the place. I'm actually going to go directly from Azomite's website of what they recommend as well. Realize this all regardless of who you buy it from or what it's bagged under, all this stuff is coming from one deposit. Unique features: grow stronger plants and better tasting vegetables. Vegetables that can get all their micronutrients are going to be more nutritious. They also taste better, which is a lot of times why your home gardening stuff, a great example is lettuce. We used to give lettuce away when my wife worked in the office to coworkers, and they'd be like, wow, this lettuce actually has flavor. Well, obviously it was a different variety than what was in the store, but it was also getting stuff that your plants in the store aren't getting, and they're also not being force fed with a bunch of chemical nitrogen. Improves weight increase at harvest, so bigger yields. Land from ancient mineral deposit in Utah, remineralizes nutrient dependent soils. OMRI listed for organic use. Let's go to Azomite's recommendation. This is directly from them, from their website, and since we're talking about home gardening here, not commercial use, let's go directly to vegetable and flower gardens. They break it down. They have it at half a pound per 100 square feet, or half a pound per 200 feet of linear road. Do you see the difference there? We're going from basically recommending rates at 10 square feet, and they're recommending almost that same at 100 square feet. And this is what I kept finding, like how much do you actually have? By the way, I looked it up. Can you add too much to this to your soil? The answer is no. It's not a chemical. It's not going to poison anything, and you're good. But some examples, like for people who do a lot of compost, add 50 to 100 pounds per ton of compost. Has hydroponics on here. Greenhouse and potting soil, adds 7 to 10 pounds per cubic yard of potting soil, which really isn't that much. It's like 14, a little less than 14 bags of there's like 2 cubic feet bag of potting soil, like 13 or so. I believe there's like 27. I could be wrong. There's around like 27 cubic feet in a cubic yard. So it's really not a whole lot. For like golf courses, it has 2 to 3 pounds per thousand. So the rates are all over the place. It's kind of like they have it breakdown for home use for the compost at much smaller rates, 5 to 10 pounds per 200 pounds instead of a ton. So our greenhouse is the same. So I really don't think you're going to have any issue, overdoing it. Lawns is 2 to 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So, I mean, do your own research about how much you want to add. If I actually have this back here of who I got it from, I'll tell you who I got it from in a second. Directions: add 1 heaping teaspoon per gallon pot spread, 1 to 2 pounds per 10 square feet. So I got one thing telling me a half a pound per 100 square feet, and I got this telling me 1 to 2 pounds per 10 square feet. I got this other website telling me this. There's no consistency in the recommendations, but you're not going to poison your plants with it. If you're curious, this is what the box looks from the My Soil website. I'll have a link in the description to their website. And this is the company that I got all my products from. Basically, I'll have links to them. I really like them. They're based out of Virginia, Seven Springs Farm. They have a lot of organic stuff, and everything's organic. Most of the stuff is meant for like small market farmers, but they still stuff small enough for home gardeners as well. I can go directly in here and say, hey, I need a nitrogen only fertilizer, and I have a whole list. I have their product, natural, safe, pelleted. I got blood meal, feather meal. I got stuff for fish, corn. Some people do not want to use animal products in their garden, even though like 90-95% of all organic fertilizers are in some way related to an animal, whether it be blood, bone, feather, manure. But if you're one of those people for some reason who does not want to use animal products in your garden, they do have non-animal based products. Like I said, you do have corn gluten meal here. They have soy protein. So they use soy protein to make nitrogen fertilizer. You got fish in here, all sorts of stuff. They have pesticides, fungicides, some organic, some not. I'll have a link in the description of the video. Seven Springs Farm. Prices are actually really good. You know, they don't do that free shipping nonsense. We really need to get away from that free shipping. It just causes a lot of price manipulation, especially with constant changing costs and what shipping rates are. Their shipping rates basically kind of like based on how much the weight is, but for what the weights were, they're actually fairly reasonable. And you can play around with how much product you want to order based on the shipping, but the prices are really good. And I have a little saying on the back here: in nature, nothing exists alone. Last part of this video. What am I using in my garden? This is blood meal, 1200. They actually have it listed in their magazine as 1300. It really doesn't matter. This is 10 pounds. This was not that expensive. Very affordable. For use when plants need instant nitrogen, it's not going to provide instant nitrogen. When I talked about very early in the video about looking at the nitrogen cycle, your organic products, your non-chemical based products, they take time to break down in that soil. And actually, this magazine, it says average about 40 days, because these are actually feeding the soil, feeding those microbes and bacteria in there that in return give you that nitrogen. Versus chemical stuff does not feed anything. It just feeds the plants, and it messes up the stuff that's in the soil over time, and plants become dependent on it. It becomes like, basically they become addicted to it, versus organically you don't have that problem. For use of plants need instant nitrogen, also repels varmints. It's kind of like blood meal. You can make deer go away, and like moles and voles if you have those. I guess they don't like the smell of the dried up blood. Can be used in your compost pile to help heat it up. Side dress vegetables at 2 pounds per 100-foot row, and then it has on here acreage, are 300 to 500 pounds per acre. We're just going to use that fertilizer recommendation that I got from my soil, which was 8.5 pounds for my garden. Like I said, I'm probably not using all 10 pounds because I'm going to spread it a little bit in my raised garden bed, as well as the little buckets I have, and some stuff around the yard as well. Anyway, long video, guys, I know, but I hope this helps somebody. I hope we covered everything. If you have any questions, leave a comment. I will have links in the video and the description of it for the reports to Michigan State University about the boron. We'll have my soil. We'll have the products that I got from the farm place, the blood meal, as well as the azomat, and then borax. Just get it at Walmart. It's freaking dirt cheap, and literally I'm only going to use 2 teaspoons out of this whole box of 4 pounds. It's crazy how little you need of this stuff. It really truly is a micronutrient. Anyway, I hope y'all have a great day. Until next time.